Double battles allow for some of the coolest strategies in competitive Pokémon because of all the things that are possible when you have an ally on the battlefield to help you out. It opens up the potential for new moves, items, and what I want to focus on, abilities. So in this video, I thought it would be fun to rank all doubles abilities in Pokémon from worst to best. I want to be clear in that I will only be counting abilities that exclusively work in doubles, so no abilities that affect the whole battlefield or that affect the user and the user's ally, since those are still usable in singles, and that encompasses about 50 abilities, which is way more than I'd like to rank. So instead, we just have 13 of them, which is much more manageable. I will be considering the effects of these abilities mostly in a vacuum, not on the specific mons that get them, because a lot of them are signature abilities on bad mons, and I want it to be less about the mon they are on and more about the ability. There is one ability where I will have to consider the context though, and I will also be considering the context of the moves and items affected for all abilities. In last place, number 13, we have Plus and Minus. These are the first doubles abilities ever, originally being exclusive to Plusle and Minun. They have the effect that if the user has plus or minus and the ally has plus or minus, they will both have their special attack stats boosted by 50%. The effect is definitely good, but the required condition makes it completely not worth it. Needing two of your Pokémon on the battlefield at the same time with one of these abilities really limits the use of the effect, since if one of them faints or switches out, neither of them have an ability anymore. In context, Plus and Minus are bad because the mons that get them all have better options, but even in a format like almost any ability doubles, where you can pick whatever ability you want, no one was touching Plus or Minus. You'd be much better off having an ally with Beads of Ruin, Battery or Power Spot, or have an ally use Helping Hand, and while each of those are worse in some ways compared to Plus and Minus, none of them require both of your Pokémon to have a certain ability to activate. At number 12, we have Healer. This ability grants the user's ally a 30% chance of being healed of their status condition at the end of every turn. Status conditions are definitely good to avoid, with the most common ones in VGC being Amoonguss' Spore and Incineroar's Will-O-Wisp, but a 30% chance is way too low for it to be useful in the fast-paced nature of double battles. It's also something that's completely dependent on your opponent, unless maybe you're pairing it with Rest, as opposed to most of these other abilities that give you much more control on when and how they will activate. Rest isn't really a great option in doubles because for Pokémon that lack recovery, partner healing is a much better option with things like Life Dew, Heal Pulse, and Pollen Puff. If you're really worried about Spore, there's Safety Goggles and Terra Grass, and for Will-O-Wisp there's Terra Fire. For all status conditions, holding a Lumberry, setting up Misty Terrain, and using Heal Bell are much more consistent than relying on the 30% chance of Healer, and even then, those three strategies are pretty rare. At number 11, we have Symbiosis. This ability passes the user's held item to its ally immediately after it consumes an item. There are quite a few mons that either have abilities that benefit from, or just general strategies that benefit from consuming an item, so it has somewhat of a use in doubles. A Paradox mon could consume a booster energy, a Meteor Beam user could consume a Power Herb, an Unburdened mon could consume a Terrain Seed, or a Hyper Voice user could consume a Throat Spray, and then get their partner's item from Symbiosis to deal even more damage with a Life Orb, or preserve their survivability with a Focus Sash, or whatever you want them to do. With how specific the setup is though, Symbiosis isn't really that great. You're basically giving up one Pokemon's item and ability so that the other one can have two items. The effect of almost all consumed items will go away upon switching, so it forces you to stay in because otherwise you're wasting that item boost. Symbiosis also won't work if your partner's item was knocked off, and if it gets tricked or switcherooed, chances are you won't have the right item to be consumed. At number 10, we have Receiver and Power of Alchemy. These abilities allow the user to copy the ability of an ally that has just fainted. These were probably the hardest abilities to rank because they have some of the weirdest effects out of any other abilities on this ranking. It's most notoriously used on Alolan Muck to copy its ally Smeargle's Moody to get a bunch of random stat boosts in addition to its evasion boost that it probably already had from using Minimize. Other than that, there really aren't very many practical uses for it since the ability is just so limited in its distribution. In a vacuum though, it could possibly allow a Mon with a good spread damaging physical move to copy huge power. On a Mon with a one-hit KO move, imagine it copying No Guard. On a Mon with Spore, imagine it copying Prankster. Because of how difficult it is to imagine these scenarios actually playing out, the fact that you have to let one of your Pokemon faint to even have it work at all, and the fact that Skill Swap exists, I think it's fair to put them this low on the list. At number 9, we have Telepathy. This ability allows the user to be immune to all attacking moves from its ally. The best use of telepathy is that it allows you to negate the damage you would normally take when your ally has a spread move that hits all surrounding Pokemon. While this is a pretty good use, the reason this ability isn't higher up is because most relevant moves that do that also have a type that can be immune, so you're typically better off finding a Mon of that type rather than a Mon with telepathy. Flying types are immune to Earthquake, ground types are immune to Discharge, ghost types are immune to Explosion and Self-Destruct, and steel types are immune to Sludge Wave. Protect also gives you a one-turn immunity to your partner's move, which most Pokemon will have in doubles, making Telepathy's uses pretty limited. Telepathy doesn't protect the user from status moves, so any status moves that affect all surrounding Pokemon like Teeter Dance, or that affect the whole battlefield like Perish Song will not be blocked, and since Pollen Puff is an attacking move, it blocks the ally healing effect. At number 8, we have Curious Medicine. This ability causes the user to reset its ally's stat changes upon switch in. Unlike Healer, I could see more uses for this ability that you could intentionally set up as opposed to ones where you're countering something that your opponent could potentially do to you. High power moves like Draco Meteor and Overheat lower your stats after use, making it typically disadvantageous to use more than one before switching out. If you have a Pokemon with Curious Medicine, you could send them in after your ally uses one of those moves, resetting their negative stat changes back to 0, allowing them to fire off another Draco Meteor or Overheat. You could also reset Intimidate, which lowers physical attack, which is good if you don't want to use a Clear Amulet, or you could reset the defensive drops from moves like Close Combat and Headlong Rush. At number 7, we have Propeller Tail and Stalwart. These abilities allow the user's moves to ignore the effects of redirection, which means any moves or abilities that cause you to directly target a Pokemon different from the one you originally targeted. With how common Follow Me and Rage Powder are, being able to always hit your intended target is a decent use. The main reason that they're this high up is because along with one signature move, they are the only way for single target moves to ignore Follow Me and Ally Switch, with Follow Me being especially spammable since it wasn't given the drawback of decreasing its chance of success if used consecutively like Ally Switch was in Gen 9. It also lets you ignore the redirection of Storm Drain and Lightning Rod, not the immunity, which is a decent use as well. Rage Powder can at least be ignored by the safety goggles since it's a powder move, but having something that ignores Follow Me is really nice since support mons like Clefairy and Indeedee Female get way too much mileage from this move. At number 6, we have Co-Star. This ability allows the user to copy the ally's stat changes upon switch-in. There are plenty of good stat boosting moves like Dragon Dance, Quiver Dance, and Belly Drum, and being able to copy those boosts from your ally on switch-in is quite good. There was a strategy going around in Scarlet and Violet Reg A where you get a Dondozo's double Omni boost with Tatsugiri, and then try to intentionally knock out your Tatsugiri so that Flamigo could come in to copy those stat boosts, giving you 2 Pokemon with double Omni boosts. There have also been some really scummy ones, like copying a Muk's evasion boost so that you have 2 Mons with max evasion, along with any moody boost that it gets after copying it from Smeargle, as I mentioned in the Power of Alchemy section. In context, it's really only useful with evasion, attack, and speed boosts, but if a special attacking or more defensive Mon got Co-Star, I could see a lot more uses for it when things like Quiver Dance and Geomancy exist. At number 5, we have Battery. This ability increases the power of the user's allies' special attacking moves by 30%. 30% is a really solid amount, the same as Life Orb, and just needing to be next to the Pokemon makes this effect very useful. It could be good when paired with a Choice Scarfed ally, since that would allow them to get a speed and special attack boost, an ally that doesn't have great ways of boosting its special damage output, or an ally that just wants to boost its special attack for whatever reason. It does only affect special attacking moves, which is definitely a limiting factor, and in context, it's not very good since it's limited to Charge-a-Bug, but if another bulkier, more versatile Pokemon got access to it, it would see a lot more use. At number 4, we have Power Spot. This ability increases the power of all of the user's allies' moves by 30%. This is just a better version of Battery, since it affects all attacking moves, not just special moves. Bulbapedia incorrectly states that Battery increases special attack when it actually increases the power of special moves, which isn't an important distinction 99% of the time, since the attacking stat and move power are multiplied right next to each other in the damage calculation, so any modifiers to either of them would result in nearly the same thing since multiplication is commutative. There are still some very specific things where it would be better to boost special attack instead of special move power, but that's not the case here since they both affect move power. I just bring this up to show that Power Spot is just a strictly better version of Battery, and Battery is already pretty good, so Power Spot deserves this number 4 spot. Like Battery, it's stuck to a pretty bad Mon, but it would be really good if it were on a Mon with a better defensive typing that could actually take a special attack. At number 3, we have Hospitality. This ability restores 25% max HP of the user's ally upon switch in. Healing HP is a very good use because getting damaged will come up in essentially every game, and 25% is a very solid amount, the same amount that the Citrus Berry and Life Dew heal. Hospitality is great for keeping an item or ability intact that requires being at full HP, like the Focus Sash, Sturdy, Multiscale, Shadow Shield, and Terra Shell. It's great when used on bulky partners that don't have a great way of healing HP, or ones that just don't have the room for them since they would rather be setting up or attacking. Activating on switch-in means that at the cost of giving up your turn, it can be activated with priority since switching is the first thing to happen on a turn, ensuring the safety of your ally. If you're switching in after one of your Pokemon was knocked out, then it doesn't give up a turn and is just a free Citrus Berry to your ally. At number 2, we have Commander. This ability causes a Tatsugiri to jump into its ally Dondozo's mouth as soon as they are both on the battlefield to give it +2 in attack, defense, special attack, special defense, and speed. Tatsugiri then enters an invulnerable state where it can no longer move for as long as it's still in Dondozo's mouth. It will only be able to attack once Dondozo is knocked out. This is by far the weirdest ability to rank, as I just cannot rank it in a vacuum because of how much it's tied to Tatsugiri and Dondozo. Even just considering Tatsugiri and Dondozo specifically, it's just that good, so I think it deserves the number 2 spot. Dondozo Tatsugiri has been a viable strategy in essentially every VGC format that it's been legal, and it makes sense why. Dondozo has really high HP, making it very tanky after a +2 defense and special defense boost, and it can boost its stats even more if it uses Order Up while Tatsugiri is in its mouth. Dondozo has access to Unaware itself, so opposing stat boosts won't work on it, or it could use Oblivious so that it doesn't get its attack drop from Intimidate. And number 1 goes to Friend Guard. This ability reduces the damage dealt to the user's ally from attacking moves by 25%. Not only is this effect very good, but unlike most of the other abilities on this ranking, Friend Guard is in effect at all times. It has no condition that needs to be met or limitation on how frequently it can be used, like only working one time or only having a chance to activate. Being damaged by an attacking move will come up in 99% of battles, unlike status conditions, stat drops, or redirection that won't always come up in every battle, so taking reduced damage is extremely useful. This ability is so good that players are willing to use a not fully evolved Pokemon, an early route bug, and a family of mono normal mice to get access to it. It definitely helps that all of those mons have redirection, but just imagine it on a fully evolved Pokemon with actual defensive stats and an actual good defensive typing. Because of how consistent, effective, and straightforward it is to use, Friend Guard is my pick for the best doubles ability in Pokemon. And that's every doubles ability ranked. Let me know if you disagree with any of my placements and where you would have ranked them instead. I was also thinking of ranking doubles moves, so let me know if that's something you'd like to see. Anyway, if you want to support me and my channel, just leave a nice comment since I do read all comments. You can also become a member for 99 US cents a month to get a badge next to your name and early video access like all of these lovely people. If you want bonus content, check out my second channel, Extra Bell, where I post videos I've scrapped from the main channel, as well as more casual, unscripted videos. Likes are also one of the ways that YouTube determines if a video should be passed around to more people, so if you feel that this video deserves to be, I would appreciate it. Thanks for watching.